Hey everyone, today on the GPU Audio Innovation Lounge podcast, we're joined by Freddy Vinehill-Cliffe, product specialist with NUGEN Audio. Freddy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
And I'm also joined by my colleague Chris, marketing manager with GPU Audio. Chris, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to speaking to Freddy. We've met in person a couple of times.
Cool. Chris, do you want to give us an update on kind of what's on the horizon for GPU Audio over the next few months?
Sure, yeah. In terms of product releases, GPU Audio is starting to step things up a little bit. So we will have our very first partner products available very, very soon. It's something that we've been working on for a long, long time. And we will be unleashing a GPU power on partner products, on the very near horizon. Well, thanks for joining us today, Freddy. What's going on at NUGEN Audio right now?
So we're fairly busy at NUGEN at the moment. We were very lucky that the past few years of the pandemic didn't have a huge negative impact on us. I would say our number of staff at NUGEN has like doubled or tripled kind of over the past 3 years, which seems kind of crazy to say. But that means that we've got more programmers, which means that we are able to work on more new products, more updates for existing products, and so on. So pretty busy. We've just released a brand new plugin called AB Assist 2. So the clue you might guess from the name is that it's an updated version of AB Assist. And we have also just announced VisLM 3. Anyone who's familiar with NUGEN is probably familiar with VisLM. That's like our flagship product. We've had to postpone the actual release date slightly of VisLM 3. I think that's going to be in very early 2024 now, but we have announced it, and I would like to think people are pretty excited. I know I'm excited.
Excellent. And what features do you have in AB Assist 2? Obviously, there are a number of well-known sort of AB plugins available on the market. What is it that makes AB Assist 2 so unique?
So I'd say it's a massive step forward from the original version of AB Assist. The main things that we've added in are surround support. So you can now do A/B testing, I think in any channel count. I'm pretty sure it's unlimited channel count, or it's certainly up to at least like 22 channels, so it's kind of far beyond what you would normally need. You can also compare up to 4 audio sources. So although A/B testing is a little bit of a snappier name, it is actually more like A/B/C/D testing. You can switch between 4 different audio sources. We've added in short-term loudness matching, or essentially just level matching, to make sure that you don't get tricked by, a lot of the time, particularly in music production, if you're comparing 2 mix revisions or a mix and like a draft master or something, it's easy to get tricked into thinking louder is better. So we've added in short-term loudness matching. And then the other thing as well is, this is sort of more, it's not a very exciting feature update, but it definitely makes things a lot smoother. A lot of our plugins up until now have used what we call pods. Basically, we've got these free plugins, NUGEN Send and NUGEN Receive, that come packaged in with a lot of our other plugins. And they're used to kind of let various NUGEN plugins communicate with each other. And although they work fine, it's a bit fiddly and a bit clunky to use. So AB Assist 2 is, I don't think it's the very first, but it's one of the first plugins we've made where multiple plugin instances actually just communicate directly with each other. So that means if you've got 4 instances of AB Assist 2 in a project, if you open one of the UI windows, you're actually able to see all 4 instances in the same window, so you don't have to switch between windows. I know that seems kind of obvious, but it's a thing that we've been trying to get right for a while now, and quite excited to roll that out into some of our other plugins as well.
When I think of NUGEN Audio, I think of metering. Like, you guys kind of own that space, and I think that's something that up and coming engineers and producers, enthusiasts, they don't quite think about. But having a tool like AB Assist is a game changer completely. If you're just using your ears to mix, I mean, I think those days are kind of in the past, because, people are mixing on headphones, they're mixing on earbuds, they're mixing on, the new Slate VSX and, all these really amazing tools. Have you noticed a kind of an adoption more of kind of the younger crowd thinking like, I need to get this. I need to start using these metering tools. Maybe they're thinking more about, just perfecting their mixes through using tools like NUGEN makes, rather than like, I need to get this new compressor plugin, or I need to get this new sample pack or whatever. Have you kind of noticed that trend happening with kind of the younger up and coming producer?
Honestly, no, but I think that it will. I would like to think that it will go in that direction. I think there's a tendency among kind of like younger up and coming producers to kind of have that idea of like, no, I can just trust my ears. Whereas it's actually, in my experience at least, it's more people who've been doing this a long time who understand the importance of reference tools like AB Assist, or loudness meters like VisLM or MasterCheck, or other kind of utility tools like that. I think one thing that's really good about going to events like AES is that you do get to speak to younger audio engineers. And I think having that face-to-face demonstration does kind of highlight the importance for that. But I do feel like a lot of the conversations I have at like AES or NAMM or whatever other events I'm going to, the younger people who come to the booth, initially what they're interested in is the kind of exciting like effects. So they'll be interested in Paragon, which is the reverb plugin that we make, and maybe quite dismissive of some of the more utilitarian plugins. But then when I actually show them what you can do and the kinds of applications that it has, you can kind of see the cogs turning. So I would like to think that kind of, more younger up and coming audio engineers, producers and so on will adopt these tools in the future. But at the moment, there's this kind of, I think there's going to be a little bit of a delay before it starts to become more commonly adopted by those younger people. Although maybe your experience is different. I don't know. Like I say, that's purely based on my firsthand experience.
Yeah, I guess my question came from, for me personally, when I started to try out some of these tools like AB tools, and just caring more about loudness and perception, it was a total game changer. Mm-hmm. Rather than like going down the rabbit hole of I need a new compressor or a new saturation plugin or something like that. All those are fun, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure mix translates, and it's just going to, the client's going to love it like right away. You're hitting these standards. So, I guess it's more for like all those young people that may be listening to this, like, really seriously consider that investing in the right metering is going to kind of get you to the next level quicker than some of the other tools out there. And this is just my personal opinion, I guess. Sure.
No, I absolutely agree with you there. And for any kind of people who are new to this world that are listening, this is essentially us lecturing you and telling you to think more about metering and more about these kind of utilitarian plugins.
Sure. Well, I was going to say that actually, in terms of like people who are putting music out, like I think younger generations, they're more familiar with putting music out regularly or putting their own music out, doing their own independent releases. So therefore, a plugin like VisLM3, which you've just released, like that is really important to get your loudness right, because if you're putting your music on YouTube and you're putting your music on Spotify, on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, wherever it goes, you need to be aware of your loudness and what loudness these platforms accept, right? So I think that the younger generations may be more aware of that kind of stuff, for sure.
I think the experience that really opened my eyes to how important something like A/B testing, or particularly blind A/B testing, can be, And this is an example I keep giving, so apologies to anyone listening to this who's heard me talk about this before. But a friend of mine who is a recording engineer works in like a hybrid analog digital recording studio, and often at the start of a project there's this decision to make about whether a project is going to be primarily recorded to tape or primarily recorded directly into Pro Tools. And often what he will do is, say when they're tracking drums, which is often obviously the first thing in a session, he'll record to the tape machine and into Pro Tools simultaneously. And then he'll do kind of like a blind test with the band or the artist or whoever it is. And I'm sure you can imagine 90% of the time, the band initially are like, oh, well, of course we want it to tape. Tape is better. You've got all the analog warmth and all that. And the thing that really opened my eyes was the first time I recorded with Rob Slater is the name of this guy. The first time he recorded a band of mine, we did that blind A/B test and found that actually for that particular song, that particular performance on that day, digital was what was kind of hitting. And of course, at first we were all obsessed with the idea of recording to tape, and just something like that. Like, I think that's quite a clear example and quite a stark example as well, that like what you think is like cool or kind of has, I don't know, the most mojo or whatever, isn't always the best thing. And that's where something like blind A/B testing really comes in.
Freddie, can you give us a bit of background on like the inception of NUGEN Audio? Like,
so NUGEN has actually been around for close to 20 years now, which is kind of crazy to say. I've been with NUGEN for 6.5 years. So I've been around quite a while, and I'd say it's only really over the past like decade that NUGEN has gotten to the kind of level that it's at. But I do know about the initial kind of inception of NUGEN. So the two founders, who actually, as it happens, both aren't with NUGEN anymore, although that's only been within the past few years. There's Dr. Paul Tapper and John Scorer. Paul came from the games industry. He worked for Team 17, who made like the Worms games and all that kind of stuff. Wow. Yeah.
Massive shout out to him then.
Yeah, and John was a drum and bass producer, and I'm sure I might be misremembering some of the details of this, but essentially they met at like a barbecue. I think their wives were friends or something like that, and got talking, and John was chatting about some of the issues he was encountering as a music producer, and Paul is primarily a mathematician. He loves maths, and he kind of just started thinking up ways from a kind of maths perspective that he might be able to solve some of the problems that John was encountering. And so NUGEN just started out as kind of a hobby thing that the two of them were doing outside of work, and it eventually snowballed. So I think the first plugin they made was the original version of Monofilter. So for people who aren't aware, Monofilter is a bass management tool. It's used for collapsing low frequencies into mono whilst keeping the rest of your audio in stereo. So that's really useful if you're mixing and mastering for vinyl, or if you're mixing and mastering for something that's going to be played over a club PA. And obviously both of those things were massive concerns for John as a drum and bass producer. So it kind of snowballed from there. And then the first big thing was the original version of VisLM, which I think maybe came out around 2010. And from there, obviously, we've moved more into the audio post-production world. But to start with, it was very much music production focused, and it was focused on Paul helping John to tackle some of the problems he was encountering in his drum and bass production.
Excellent. Seems like the perfect like combination of people to make that happen. You've kind of got your tester, the guy who needs the stuff, and then the programmer there working on it.
Exactly.
That's cool, man. And so, congratulations on moving on to VisLM 3. and your other release, the third version of it. Just in terms of like you mentioned on AB Assist 2 that you have this ability to compare surround mixes. It'd be great to get your take on like immersive audio and its adaptation in the industry. Like, how do you feel about it?
So obviously, the adoption of surround in so much of the industry has been a really good thing for us. Now that kind of Dolby Atmos for music is becoming such a major thing, it means that as well as our surround tools being useful for audio post guys, they're now useful for music production guys as well. So there are so many music production studios who are using Halo Upmix or Halo Vision or the surround version of Paragon. So purely from like a selfish point of view, it's great for us because it's essentially kind of doubled the market of our surround tools. I think it's still to some extent in its infancy, at least when we're talking about like surround audio for music. But I think there's some exciting things going on. I know for me personally, I struggled for a while to see the kind of utility of surround music mixes and particularly like immersive and Atmos music mixes. But I think it was at NAMM this year, there were some really interesting conversations about car sound systems, like the sound system inside your car being almost like the ideal listening environment for Atmos for music, because it is essentially like a mobile listening chamber. It's one of the few situations where you know exactly where people are going to be sat. People are going to be in a fixed position, and you've got however many speakers in a fixed position relative to the passengers in the car. So that for me, I mean, obviously I was already excited about the possibilities of immersive music prior to that. I just couldn't really get my head around how it would fit into people's lifestyles. But something like that, like the idea of having Atmos or some other immersive sound system in a car, I think is really cool, and that's something that I'm quite excited by, and I'm quite excited by how that will develop further down the line.
Definitely, yeah. I heard of this thing that was, I think it might even be near Leeds. So it's a train ride that you can take between two different places, and on the train ride you get told, if you press play on the recording when you leave the station in one place, you get kind of like a guided tour of where you are and your location and things. And wouldn't it be amazing to combine immersive audio with those kind of experiences? But yeah, I also love the fact that the thing you said about the car, like the car being an enclosed space with reasonably immovable seats and speakers. Yeah, it seems like a really good place to do some immersive stuff. Yeah, so in terms of like audio software and musical tools right now, Freddie, what's inspiring you from like other companies, from like the wider industry? What's exciting you there?
Good question. The last kind of thing that was a real game changer for me was the Soothe EQ plugin from, is it Oak Sound or Irk Sound? I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to pronounce that.
Yeah, but it's one of those two.
Particularly for me, because a lot of the outside of NUGEN, a lot of what I work on audio wise is, so I'm like quite involved in the like punk scene in Leeds, and so often I will end up like mixing releases by kind of DIY bands where they've just recorded something on like an 8-track in their practice room, and something like Soothe has been so useful for me in terms of like taming the real nastiness that you can get in those kinds of recordings. Obviously you want some nastiness if you're a horrible DIY punk band, but that's been a really big thing for me. I'm sure there's been other stuff as well.
Well, I was just going to say they did a live version. Was it last year or this year that they released a live version of it, like a kind of lower latency version? Yeah, it's interesting how many people like that is their kind of how many people just love this plugin, and it's such a cool, like such a simple idea, but it's brilliant, isn't it?
It's one of
it's
those
genius.
plugins that feels like it's just in everyone's kind of standard tool set. I think like even in the
Yes.
audio post world, when I speak to guys who are doing like dialogue editing or any kind of like mixing, particularly in TV and film, you'll see their plugins, and it's like they all have VisLM, they all have Soothe, they all have the FabFilter Pro Q, they all have like Isotope Insight. There's a few others as well, but it's like there's like such a kind of standard tool set, I think, particularly in the post production world. And it's really cool that I'd say Erksound seems to be a fairly small company, and it's really cool that they have like managed to kind of get into that sort of standard tool set that, like, particularly in like Hollywood, every mixer in that world has the same tools because partly because they need to be able to share projects between each other. And it's like if everyone's using, I don't know, a different EQ or a different limiter, then that causes a lot of problems. So particularly in that industry, everyone uses the same stuff, and Soothe has become part of that, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they definitely found that right niche of
Absolutely.
corrective audio. And yeah, I most people I know are mixing with Soothe on a variety of different sources, kick drums, overheads, buses, and all that. So it's just indispensable for sure.
And you mentioned using it for punk music, which is a really interesting kind of use case. Tell us about your bands. I think you mentioned that you were on tour recently.
Yeah, that's right. I think when you first emailed me about doing the podcast, I was away in Ireland. So I play in a band called Thank, which is a really stupid name and really hard to Google. But it's basically like thanks, but without the S. So yeah, we've just been over to Ireland for the first time, which was really exciting. We played in Belfast and Dublin, and then down in Clonakilty, which is like a small town just outside Cork, but they have like a fairly big festival every September. It's called like the Clonakilty International Guitar Festival, which makes it sound like it's just going to be kind of a very sedate, like blues lawyer type music, but actually it's like was really like varied lineup, really interesting. Like we got treated amazingly. But yeah, so I that's like the main thing that I do. I also play in a band called Beige Palace, which is a bit less kind of active. That one's a bit more of just a laugh. And then as well as that, I'm involved in doing bits of live sound for local kind of small gigs. I'll occasionally do bits of mixing for other bands. Very, very occasionally bits of recording. But you can only there's only so far you can spread yourself. But I definitely try and support the scene, as they say.
And what are you doing in the bands? What are you playing?
So in Thank, I originally was just a vocalist, but I've started playing guitar in that band as well. And then in Beige Palace, it's the opposite way around. I was originally just the guitarist, and I started doing a bit of vocals as well. So I just vocals and guitar primarily.
There's the yin and the yang there. Yin and yang there somewhere.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. Cool. Well, I'm sure people can check out your music. We can probably share some links to your stuff if you have like Bandcamp pages and that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can do that. Do either of you guys play in bands or anything?
I've been doing that since I was like a teenager, and I'm very far from being a teenager now. So I still kind of like do stuff on the side, playing bands, kind of working on this record that started right before COVID hit. And it's taken a while, but and it's all remote. So you know how that goes. Like you have to get the rest of the guys on your Dropbox and make sure they're downloading and putting the stems into whatever DAW they use. But yeah, definitely.
Exciting. That kind of remote working thing is such a big deal for a lot of bands now. With the most recent Thank record that came out last year, we did manage to record it in person altogether, which was great. But like the writing process of that was pretty much all remote, which was a really weird experience for us. But I think it turned out okay. But that's again something that we're really trying to support people with at NUGEN. So at the start of this year, or certainly earlier this year, we released a plugin called Jota, which is designed to kind of integrate with whatever DAW you're using, but it's a way of sharing comments, notes, annotations, and feedback with like your bandmates or other collaborators.
So useful.
Thanks.
Yeah, totally, man. I saw that, and I think this is a reminder that I need to check that out. I've been the singer that I work with. He's now using Logic, so we can easily just transfer stuff back and forth using the same amps and whatnot. Yeah, something to allow us to give feedback, detailed feedback would be really, really helpful.
And there is, of course, also a free version of Jota as well, Freddy, right?
There is, yes. So the version that runs as a plugin insert, that is paid for, but the standalone application is free, and it's possible to share the kind of Jota notes files between the free version and the paid version. So the idea is that if you're a producer, you might have the paid version within Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, and then you can send the free version to the people you're working with. They can give you their feedback, and then when you import it into the session, it's already right there on the project timeline with a timestamp, so you know exactly what they're talking about. There's no ambiguity about that. I know I had a project a little while ago where we got halfway through the kind of mix notes, and it turned out that the drummer thought the chorus was in a different place to everyone else. So all the feedback he'd been giving about the chorus, it turned out wasn't about the chorus at all. So yeah.
Yeah, that was the intro. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
So Freddy, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Could you kind of share what's on the horizon for NUGEN in the coming months?
Sure. So I mentioned earlier on that we've announced VisLM3, but that the actual release has had to be postponed slightly. But that's the main thing on the horizon. I don't think I went into any of the kind of specifics of what that update is going to entail, but we're really excited for VisLM3. Some of the major changes are that we've added in stem monitoring. Essentially what that means is similar to AB Assist, where multiple instances of the plugin link together, multiple instances of VisLM3 will link together. So you'll be able to have one instance measuring your dialogue, one instance measuring your music, one instance measuring your effects, but you'll be able to see all those within the same window, so they'll link together automatically. We're also adding in segments. So I think particularly in the US, some TV networks now, rather than asking for a loudness target over the entire program, they're asking for a loudness target for each section between ad breaks, which makes a lot of sense, but it causes some problems for audio engineers. So VisLM3 will be able to automatically detect those segments. You'll be able to fine tune that depending on whether it's detected that correctly. You will also be able to just do it manually if you'd rather not have the automatic detection. But that means you'll be able to get an integrated loudness target for each of those segments. And those are, I think, the main big things. There will be some other kind of smaller new features as well. But yeah, really excited for that. And beyond that, a few other updates to existing products. I don't think we have much in the way of brand new stuff on the horizon, but there's a few more kind of like major updates of products that haven't had a facelift in quite a long time. So yeah, really excited for that as well.
Cool. And I'm assuming you will be at AES and NAM in January?
I will definitely be at AES, and I think I will be at NAM, although I haven't confirmed that yet. But yeah, definitely AES.
Okay.
So hopefully see you there. And
Cool.
NAM, fingers crossed.
Absolutely. I will. I still have to get my ticket for AES, but I plan to stop by and check out VisLM for sure.
Amazing.
Thank you very much for speaking to us today, Freddie. It's been really fun.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Freddie.
Cheers, guys. Speak to you soon.